Lord, I confess that I've been a criminal. I've stolen your breath and sang my own song. And Lord, I confess that I'm far from innocent. These shackles I wear, oh, I bought on my own. The scarlet sins had a crimson cost. You nailed my debt to that old rugged cross. An empty slate at the empty grave. Thank God that stone was rolled away. Lord, I confess I've been the prodigal, made for your house, but walked my own roads. Then Jesus came and tore down my prison walls. Death came to life when he called me by name. Scarlet sands had a crimson cost. You nailed my debt to that old rugged cross. An empty slate at the empty grave. Thank God that stone was rolled. Scarlet sands had a crimson cost.
Hey everyone!
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday! Happy end of the long weekend, right?
Yeah.
Or
Well,
a week
no.
after.
A week after.
Happy week after a long
Yes.
weekend. But it feels like summer.
Yes.
Feels like summer. Maybe that's why. It's a beautiful day out today.
Yes.
Good to see everybody.
And it also is the long weekend for all of our American
Yes.
friends and family. They are experiencing, or they are in the long weekend
They
right
are
now.
in the long weekend. Maybe that's where my brain's at.
Probably.
All of them are off today, enjoying
Yes.
their long weekend.
Yes.
That's why. But good to see everybody on here. Let us know, what are you having for lunch today?
Yes.
Where are you tuning in from? Let's see who we have. Nicole, good to see you.
Martin.
Good to see you. Wonder, good to see you.
Yes. We're so grateful that you guys are on here with us. I am so excited about this sermon. It was Pentecost Sunday yesterday.
It was.
Big day in church.
Big day
Yes.
in church, and it was a great message by Pastor. I'm
Yeah.
so glad that he decided to get up and preach. I know he says he normally takes the weekend off.
Yes.
So it was great to hear from him. And I think one thing that, before we get into everything, one thing that he talked about, which I loved, is when he was talking about books, right? And sometimes you have books on your shelf that are just sitting there,
Yes.
that you never pick up. And they're super knowledgeable and have all the information that you need for a circumstance that you're going through, but you don't pick it up
Right.
until the time really, I don't know, something goes on in your life, something
Yes.
changes, and you need that book title.
Yeah.
So I want to know, for any book lovers out there, has there ever been a book that sat on your shelf and then one day you've picked it up and it had exactly what you needed?
Yes. I mean, I have experienced that time and time again, and I thought it was funny when Pastor was saying it's not until you're desperate for it that you start digging for it.
Yeah.
And the book for me was It's Not Supposed to Be This Way by Lisa TerKeurst.
That's a great book.
A great book.
Great
It had
book.
been sitting on my shelf. I bought it when it first came out. I think it was like 2018.
Okay.
And then I just let it collect dust for years and years and years. And then about a year or two ago, I picked it up and I read it, and it completely changed my perspective of the situation I was walking through.
So if you haven't read Lisa
Yes.
TerKeurst, this is our soft push.
Yes.
Go and get it, because that's a great book.
Yeah.
For me, this was a pretty old book, and it was actually one of Stephen's books. It was called
A Lion in a
A
Snowy
Lion in a
Pit.
Snowy Pit. I've always not said it. I've always
Yeah.
seemed to mess up the title, but With a Lion in a
Yeah.
Snowy Pit by Mark Batterson. And it was all about having courage and my word for the year is courage. And I remember I messed up the words
Yes.
that I was talking, and Felicia said, "Why are you talking about a lion in a snowy pit?" And Steven's like, "That's a book." And then
Yeah.
he ran to the shelf and he got me this book, and we
Yeah.
thought it was so crazy because why would I say lion
Yeah.
in a snowy pit? And then there was a book about it, and it was all about courage, and it really, really helped me, and really just helped me understand courage
Mm-hmm.
and how courage is really just, even though you have fear, walking in it anyways.
Yeah.
And it's a really great book. So
Yeah.
the title sounds a little interesting,
Yes.
but I can promise you it's great.
In
So-
a pit with a lion on a
in
snowy
a pit
day.
with a lion on a snowy day.
Yes.
See, I'm still messing it up, but hey, God still uses that and
Yes.
points you to books that you need to read.
Yeah, he sure does. Yeah, that whole situation had to have been God. I remember us going back and forth, and you kept saying, "That's not what I said," and Steven was like, "No, that's what you that's what you just said."
So strange.
So
and then
strange.
there was a book about it. I love
Yes.
that. Wonder, I love Fight to Flourish. That was one of my favorite books, Jenny Lesko.
Yeah.
That my word was flourish one year too. And I picked up that book, and it really, again, helped me understand what flourishing really, really looks like. And Tim, greater book.
Yes.
Can't go wrong. Pastor
Can't go
Steven.
wrong. Someone put in the chat, the Bible, the day I was saved. And I think that perfectly goes along with what Pastor was saying about sometimes we don't dig for something until we're desperate for
Yeah.
it. And there's so many times where I picked up the Bible and I need a word, and I'm like Googling scriptures on my situation, and I start getting desperate for it, and then God speaks so clearly to me. But it's so interesting that it takes that desperation for us to get to that point and to really dig for it.
Yeah, I love that. Bible's my favorite book.
Yes.
Hands down.
All-time favorite.
All-time favorite book.
Yeah.
But the sermon was amazing.
Yeah.
I know there's going to be a part 2
Yes.
next week, but let's just go through it a little bit. Put your sermon takeaways
Yeah.
in the chat, and we're going to watch one of our favorite clips. So check it out.
Businessman in my church, I don't even know how many millions of dollars of business he's done. He said, make sure you tell the church it was slow, steady, sudden. Slow, steady, sudden. We saved for years. We tithed for years. We lived beneath our means for years. We went through cycles. He's a home builder. We went through the 2008 crisis, and it was slow. But we were steady. And then it was sudden. And then he used the word, I want you to hear this. He said, and now God has us stewarding more than we could have ever imagined.
That's so great.
So great.
I love that principle so much. This idea that things are slow, they're steady, they're sudden, and then you have to steward whatever that blessing is on the other side.
Yeah.
And so many of you, Chanel put it in the chat, Miriam put it in the chat, that's what stood out for you too, this slow, steady, sudden, this whole idea that things happen through consistency. And Nadine said it too, what happens subtly is usually engineered steadily.
Yeah.
And I'd love to know, when has there been a time in your life where you've experienced this slow, steady, suddenly, and then stewarding on the other side? Put it in the chat too.
Yes, put it in the chat. I mean, I feel like most of you know what I'm gonna share, and I feel like I shared a lot, but the situation that I've walked through has been so applicable, especially through the sermons recently, is just understanding that God was engineering something from the start. From before I was born, he knew you while you were still in your mother's womb. And it's me coming into ministry and coming on staff here at Elevation was something that was slow, steady, sudden, and then I had the opportunity and the privilege to steward the position that I'm in. But before I came on staff, I had been serving in youth, and I was serving in youth for a little over a year.
We kept hearing your name all the time. You kept coming up in everything.
And I thought that I was just doing something super low key, flying under the radar, just coming in, serving. And I was so grateful. And we even kind of talked about, like, sometimes you're just so grateful to even just be there and be a part of something like that. And so there was one day that you guys had approached me and said, hey, like, we would love to sit down and have a conversation with you. And I, at the time, wasn't really sure what the conversation was about. Turns out it actually was an interview for me to come on staff, but it happened really suddenly, and everything just kind of went super fast after that. But something that felt like it was taking a while, or not even a thought of mine, but God was steadily having me in certain places and positions, and then everything all at once.
You were just at the gate doing
Yeah.
the next best thing.
Right.
Just being faithful in what God has given you, and then he gave you more, right?
Yes.
And I think that's so cool. It's such a testament. I think about a time in my life. So many of you know I used to be a teacher before I came into ministry. And I was a teacher in England, and then I moved back home. But when I moved back home, I didn't become a teacher right away. There's a big process to get on these lists. But what I knew to do I was to volunteer at a school. So I went back to my elementary school, and I was their reading tutor. And I was their reading tutor for probably almost a year. And I'd go to all the different classes. I'd pull the kids out of their class and read with them. Now, I had been teaching for 2 years, and that's obviously what I really wanted to do. But I knew that the next best thing would be to just serve where I was at. And I kept going, I kept showing up, and finally one day there was an opportunity to apply to the supply teaching list, and I got on that list, stayed faithful in supplying, and then suddenly that principal, there was an opening and I was able to get the job. But it was through this like consistent, steady, I'm gonna keep reading with these kids for as long as it takes, just believing in faith. If God called me to it, he would work it out. And he was working behind the scenes.
Right.
And I can look back on that situation now and just know that God's still doing that in my life. He's not only going to do it once, it might look different, but he's always, always going to be threading through our story and putting these things into our life on purpose. Like Pastor was sharing about Holly and how they met. It was this one decision that he made, and look at how they've taken this ministry.
Right. And you don't always know what God is doing behind the scenes. And I think that can be somewhat of a tension point for us at times, because we're like, Lord, I don't understand. I was saying earlier that as I was listening to the sermon, the song Waymaker really was impressed upon my heart, where it says that even when I don't see it, you're working. And that's God's character. Like, we have no idea what's going on behind the scenes. One of my favorite stories in the Bible, Pastor touched on it yesterday, and it was from 2 Kings, and it's 2 Kings 3:17 is the scripture that I want to share with you all. But it says, "For this is what the Lord says, you will see neither wind nor rain, yet this valley will be filled with water, and you, your cattle, and other animals will drink." And if you haven't read the story, go back and read it. The prophet Elisha had told them that they were to dig ditches, and they were experiencing a drought, and there was no water in the land. And so he's saying that the Lord is asking them to do this thing, and they're like, I don't understand. Why are we doing this thing? But they were faithful.
That's what it feels so many times.
Every time. You're like, I don't understand why I'm doing this or what I'm doing or how I got here. But it was that consistent obedience and that steadiness that then led to the Lord, like, to think that there was water filling the ditches without them seeing rain, that doesn't make sense. But the Lord did it, and he provided. And so I think that story is so incredible in terms of like just being consistent, being obedient, and really understanding that even when you don't see it, he's working. He is always, always working.
And Pastor said it's so much about digging inside of you, right? It's really the doing.
Right.
You can have a dream about something, but it's when you dig that ditch, when you do the hard work to pull the roots out of maybe old patterns you have or different things that you do, and really work, like dig the ditch, like really work hard on what you want to see happen and be consistent in that. And then God can work suddenly. But what I really loved about Pastor's message was he really talked about both sides. Like he played both. He said God does work suddenly, and sometimes things come just like that. But other times God is still, even if it doesn't happen right away, God is still working in the waiting. And Chanel actually said it on here. Shout out to Chanel. The absence of evidence is not evidence of absence.
Right.
And I think there's been so many times in my life where I feel like it's not happening right away, so it means it's not going to happen. Or somebody else is getting something, so it's not going to happen for me. There can be comparison in there too. But I love what he said, that that's actually not true. Just because you don't see the evidence of what you want doesn't mean it's not going to come or it's not going to happen. And I don't know, I just thought that was just so encouraging to every season in life. To all of us that are in a waiting season for something, because we always joke about how we're always waiting. We're always waiting. There's always something. You always get to one area of your life, then you're waiting for the next area of your life. You get one position and then you're waiting for the next position. We're always waiting. But that was such a great reminder. And it also got me thinking about the story of Naomi and Ruth. And Ruth had no idea when she decided to stay with Naomi that she would meet Boaz.
Right.
She was, again, just doing the next best thing. She was being steady in that. And then one day, she met the man of her dreams. And again, I think that's so encouraging, and again, such a testament on how God works in these situations.
Yeah. And I think even playing off of that story of Ruth and Naomi, Pastor had shared this quote, and it said, a lot of times you will have to do the mission even when you don't feel the way you did when you said yes to the mission. I think about all the projects in our lives that we do, whether it be cleaning out the garage, taking care of the garden in the backyard, heading to work sometimes. Like when you said yes to doing that thing, you felt a certain way. You felt this, oh, I'm on fire for this project, I'm gonna do it, but then you get in it or it comes up to the date. I think about all the times where you make plans with friends and you're like, I made plans, I'm so excited, let's do it. And then the day comes around, you're like, I don't really feel like it. And Pastor Stephen actually had put it in the chat earlier. What does feeling like it have to do with flowing in it?
Right.
And sometimes you really just need to walk in it and go and do the thing, even when you don't feel like it. Because God's not based on our feelings. That's not how this works. When we're called to something, we just need to walk in it, even when we don't always feel it. And I'm sure that Ruth was out in that field and she was gleaning and doing all the things. And she was like, I don't really feel like it to be under the hot sun after losing her husband and going on this journey and so many things, but she still did it out of obedience, and God honored that for her.
And it's not always like you do this and then God's going to honor right away. But what I do love about this story and what you're sharing is just this idea of consistency. And again, understanding that God really he is for you. He wants what's best for you. And when we can learn to push back our feelings, God can move so much. I feel like we talk about this all this time because, man, my feelings are a killer. I am an emotional, I let my heart run and my feelings can really change things. But I'm learning that my feelings aren't real. The truth of God is. So if I can lean more into his word and what he says about me, that's going to help me. And I'm going to actually be able to do more, even though if my feelings tell me that I can't do it. So that's good. And I feel that too. There's so many times where I want to do something and for me it's, I'm feeling tired right now. Or, I have this other project that I need to work on. So I shouldn't have said yes to that one. But it's really learning to know when you're called to something and when you need to step into it.
Yeah. So good.
So good. All right, well, we have an action step for all of you this week. When we find ourselves dealing with an unexpected situation, okay, and we all have them, they always come up, those little inconveniences, those little things that we didn't see coming, we need to respond with a but now. So I want you to think right now about a time in your life. You can put it in the chat if you want prayer for it too, but something that's happened to you, but now, how you can move forward, even though that's happened. So an example might be, I didn't do great in that job interview, but now I know what to do next time I have a job interview. Let that be the way that your focus goes. These words, but now, can totally shift our perspective and put hope on it, and not death, not shame, but hope, and knowing that God's in control and he's going to lead us steadily.
Right. And I love that but now, because it's really just an example of God's grace. That maybe you didn't do great in one thing, but God's grace is sufficient, and he covers you and he covers the situation, and now he's given you the freedom to walk forward in whatever it is you need to.
Yeah. So good.
So good.
Well, I can't wait for part 2 next week.
It's going to be great.
You're not going to want to miss it, okay? So get back to church. Let's worship together again. It's going to be so good.
It's going to be so good. And Pastor said that he actually already filmed and recorded the basin. So make sure you check out the basin on YouTube. Pastor has been sharing some incredible insight. He had said, I preached it in the basement so I could be steady in the pulpit. So I think it's going to be a good one. Make sure you check it out again on the basin on Pastor Stephen Furtick's channel on YouTube. It's going to be great.
It's going to be great. And what also is going to be great is we are back at Whitby.
Yes.
At our Whitby location this Sunday, 5 p.m., 300 Water Street. And we are having a vision night, okay? So you all have heard the news. August 13th, we are launching officially as Elevation Toronto East. We'll be meeting weekly out there. And we want to give everyone the vision of this church, what our mission is, what we feel like we are called to do. So I encourage you, come out to it, invite somebody to it, and let's be steady and see what God's going to do in building this second campus. I'm so excited.
It'll be great.
It will be great. Have an amazing week, everybody, and we will see you back here next Monday.